The Chicago Bulls cruised past the Los Angeles Clippers in a much-needed victory last night, and we're going to get into that right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to Chi-Town Sports Pod. Last night's victory against Los Angeles Clippers for the Chicago Bulls was very crucial. You know, their play has been very up and down, but last night they really made a statement. Everybody came out and played their best. And there's been a few players that have really stood out. You know, it was probably one of their best first halves of basketball I've ever watched in the Billy Donovan era of Chicago Bulls basketball. First quarter, down 5, came out of the first quarter only down 5, 30-25. And then in the second quarter, they come out firing, shooting shots like crazy, making everything. They scored 45 points to the Clippers 19. It was an insane first half to watch for the Chicago Bulls. And probably, as I said, one of the best first halves I've ever seen the Chicago Bulls play under Billy Donovan. But one of the biggest key standouts in this game was obviously Coby White. And, he got his 12 points, an extra 12 points in a minute and 7 seconds in the fourth quarter. And he was on a heater. He just kept shooting the ball, shooting. I was like, wow, all these shots just keep going in. Coby ended up finishing with 27 points. He went 9 for 16 from the field and 6 for 10 from 3. And he had 4 of those threes in a minute and 7 seconds later in the fourth quarter, which honestly is good. I could see Coby White being traded, but, we're going to get into that a little later. But it's in a future video. But also, another standout would be Matas Buzelis. He started out very slow. It was a bit of a shaky start for him, but he ended up finishing with 21 points on 8 for 14 shooting and 4 for 8 from 3. He had 4 assists and 2 rebounds only. He had 2 blocks as well and a steal to add on to that. He was plus 27 for the game, and he had the highest plus minus in the game. Actually, I lied. Ayo and Trey both had higher plus minuses than Matas, but another key standout player from this game was Ayo Dosunmu. 18 points off the bench on playing 29 minutes, 7 for 10 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Honestly, watching Ayo play basketball is so much fun. Especially, he is a critical bench player for the Chicago Bulls coming off the bench. He is that energy guy that the Chicago Bulls need to come off the bench. And it's just, we've been searching for a backup point guard for a very long time. And once we drafted him, I kind of knew, he was the guy to be the backup point guard. And I'm very, very glad that we found him to be that in that position. Trey Jones is very good in that starting spot. And then you have Ayo coming off the bench. Both of them defensively could really change the game for the Chicago Bulls. Now, looking at this game, the Chicago Bulls shot 57% from the field, 53% from 3, which is very rare for them. They shot 25 for 47 from 3. And they out-rebounded the Clippers. And their largest lead was 31, which, honestly, you don't see from the Chicago Bulls a lot. And the Clippers as well. They've had a bit of a shaky season, but, they have a bunch of, not star players, but very well-known players that are very good at basketball. John Collins, Ivica Zubac, James Harden, Brook Lopez, people like that. And, seeing the Chicago Bulls do this to a team like that, it's a little scary. They were playing their best brand of basketball in last night's game, and it really showed. But another thing I want to talk about is a little bit about Patrick Williams with his play. Obviously he was out this game, but with him being out the past 2 games, they've won both games that he's been out. And I don't want to say that it's really a sign or anything, but I really do think that the Bulls play better without Patrick Williams on the floor. And, recently today, a little bit of trade talk and rumors have really amped up about Zion Williamson trade. And, previously we heard and talked about, them shutting down rumors and kind of going away from a Zion trade. But today they've really amped it up, and I've heard and seen a lot of different things about Zion Williamson potentially being traded to the Chicago Bulls. And could the Bulls potentially get Zion Williamson and Yves Missi? And could Patrick Williams kind of be involved in that trade to kind of dump some salary off? But, that's for a different video, but we could definitely see something like that. But I thought this game overall was one of the best games the Chicago Bulls have played all season. They're 21-22, 9th in the conference. And I I think they can get up to maybe 8th, 7th place, but they're going to really have to play a good brand of basketball. Over these past few games, they haven't been playing the greatest of basketball. But I do believe that the Bulls can kind of pull it together. Obviously, they're going to be a play-in team. They're a play-in team every year. Unless they make a really big trade, that can really push them over that line and push them over that hump. Like Zion, that could be a potential thing that could help us push over. Zion and Yves Missi would be very good fits alongside Trey Jones and Josh Giddey. And I do believe they could have a huge impact on the team, as well as, maybe Kobe White would be traded in a deal like that, with Patrick Williams or something along the lines of that. But we'll have to see how that all plays out. And I think, overall this game was a very good game for the Chicago Bulls. I think they really have to ride off of this momentum that they had from this game. But that is going to be all for this one, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the game and who you thought was the best standout player from this game and what potential trades the Chicago Bulls can make to help give this lineup and this roster a little hump or a bump to get over that hump to really become a decent team that can make the playoffs. Not go anywhere far, but, have a little bit of an impact and give us a little bit of hope. But that's going to be all for this one, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.